The type of overuse injuries that runners typically encounter kind of come into two categories. They come into musculotendinous strain, like muscle strains, of course, or even chronic muscle strains, and the tendinopathy. Now, you may have heard the expression tendinitis or plantar fasciitis, but a lot of times those expressions are actually a misnomer. Because whenever you see that suffix itis, it implies that the problem is inflammation. However, if this problem has been going on for more than a couple months, then it cannot be inflammation. Inflammation is actually, and it's gotten a bad rap over the past couple of generations, inflammation is the body's way of healing itself. So it's a very orderly process without getting too much into the minutia. It goes through stages, and those stages are completed under most circumstances after 5 or 6 weeks. And then the tissues continue to heal and strengthen after that, sometimes probably for several years. Studies show that for people who've had problems like Achilles tendinitis or plantar fasciitis for months and months, that there are changes at the cell and tissue level, but they aren't the changes that are characteristic of inflammation. Instead, there are changes that are characteristic of more what we would describe as hypovascular degeneration. That is that you don't see the strong collagen fibers that you should see with good healing. Instead, you see weak collagen fibers, you see not enough collagen fibers, they're disorganized, and so you end up with a tissue that is not as strong as it should be. And ironically, what needs to be done a lot of times is that the process of inflammation has to be restarted, and then the body can actually heal itself. So those are one category of problem. The other category of problem that you commonly see are ones with movement patterns that put unusual stresses or stresses that are hard to that are hard for the body to sustain. And if that's the case, then people want to, again, train first at the slow speed so that they can make sure that they are moving the lower body, moving the feet and legs through the movement patterns that will serve them best and help prevent injury. And then once they're able to do that, then they can progress to the high-speed activity of running. The intention of walking is to really preserve energy. And it does so through the preservation of momentum. Generally, each step slows you down as much as the end of that step speeds you up. And so for that reason, you don't have to fight inertia very much. You don't have to speed up and slow down the body. Running, by contrast, as I described before, the lower extremities behave like a spring. So the energy preservation strategy of the body during running and jumping is to store the energy within the lower extremity that's behaving like a spring and then release it. So the energy preservation strategies between walking and running are very different from each other. There's a lot of variation between individuals anatomically, and the huge majority of people adapt successfully to their own anatomical variations. So if one looks at the lower body of a bunch of people individually, we find that the thigh bones are turned in slightly different ways. We find that the shin bones are turned in slightly different ways. That the feet are kind of different from each other. Some people have rather flat feet, some people have high arches. But the important thing is that most people adapt successfully to their own anatomical variations. So when you're buying running shoes, for example, the important thing really is buying ones that have the right shape to them. You don't have to worry. My recommendations, at least, is that you don't have to. Most people don't have to worry that much about, okay, are these motion control shoes, are these maximum flexibility shoes, because most people will adapt successfully as long as they are the right shape. There are people who need some help adapting to these anatomical variations. So for these people, one way that they might go are things like they're called foot orthotics or shoe orthotics. You've perhaps encountered them, those shoe inserts, and yeah, I think that those are helpful for people in order to give them some external support while the tissues are healing, while the muscles are strengthening, so that they can adapt to their own anatomical variations. But, that period of adaptation is finite, and then my recommendations would be that they wean away from the inserts, for example, as they do adapt, because you have a body, and the body usually works really well. Sometimes it needs a little bit of a crutch, but in most cases, in most healthy people, certainly not permanently.